another episode of Hope in the Time of Corona. My name's Sophie and I'm on the staff team at Hope Church. And today we are introducing something new on these videos. We are starting a book club. And this isn't a book club in the typical sense of a book club. What we're going to be doing is just sharing some recommendations of books that we've read, and we'll have different members of the community share their recommendations. It might be that you are in lockdown and you are looking for some reading inspiration, and hopefully we can get some ideas from one another. So look out for more videos in the coming weeks, but that is the plan. And before I go on to share my 3 recommendations to you, I want to do a bit of show and tell. I want to share a suggestion and a confession. So show and tell is this, Harry Potter. This isn't going to be one of my 3 recommendations because I imagine you have heard of this book, but I am a big fan. I have read Harry Potter so many times, and I just wanted to share. This is a first edition. I got it when it came out, and it's got my name in silver, neat handwriting, and it's got this little thing, which I imagine is from playing libraries or something like that. So that's fun. So there's my show and tell, but that's not one of my recommendations because you should have read it by now. If you haven't, go read it. My suggestion is that above anything else, you read this book, the Bible. It might be that you're reading it often. It might be that you're not reading it at all, that it's sitting on a bookshelf or on your bedside table and it's getting a bit dusty. If that's the case, I would recommend picking it up. I'm always amazed at the way that it speaks to me in new ways. It might be that I feel like I've read a passage many times, but I see something and think, has that always been there? Or I see something in a new way. So I would just recommend reading that book and reading it often. My confession time is on my Kindle. I thought I'd share the categories that I have on here and the quantities of books in each of those categories, so you'll learn something new about me, I imagine. So I've got 3 classics on here. I have 8 children's fiction, love a bit of children's fiction. I have 7 Christian books, and I have 37 teen fiction books. So there you go, guilty pleasure, love a trilogy like The Hunger Games, Divergent, anything like that, I am there. But again, I'm not going to share those as my recommendations because I imagine you have a bit more sophisticated taste than me. But if you too love a teen fiction, get in touch. I'll be happy to recommend many of the trilogies that I've read. So there you go, that's a bit about me. Now let's get on to my recommendations for you. The first book that I want to recommend is called Phoebe, a Story by Paula Gooder. Paula Gooder is a biblical scholar, and this is her first venture into fiction. So it's a story based on Phoebe, who is thought to have taken the letter to the church in Rome to Rome. And this is fiction, so it is not factual, but because Paula Gooder is a biblical scholar, she brings all of that to her writing. So you get a sense of what the church in Rome might have been like, what the culture in Rome might have been like. And I found it fascinating. I felt like I learnt at the same time as enjoying the story. And in the second part, there are 2 parts to this book. In the second part, she basically explains her rationale for making certain choices about the characters, the culture of the time and that kind of thing. And she suggests books, if you want to look into it more, that you might want to read. So I really enjoyed this. I read a chapter before bed for a while. It's quite light-hearted and it's a good read. So there you go, recommendation number 1. Recommendation number 2 is this. So this isn't actually one book that I'm recommending, it's a series. This is called Acts for Everybody Part 2 by Tom Wright, which I am reading in the mornings at the moment, along with reading the Bible. It's got the Bible passages in here, and then he just does a commentary throughout on different passages. And I don't know about you, but I sometimes find when I read the Bible that I can skip over the hard parts, or if I don't understand, I just move on. Whereas what this helps me to do is to stop and to sit with those passages and to learn a bit more. So I'm finding it a really helpful thing to do. And Tom Wright has written a commentary on every book of the New Testament. So there is a lot to be reading. So if you're wanting something like that, I would really recommend this. It's accessible. He's really good at including kind of story into his commentary. So it's fairly light-hearted but educational as well. So there you go, that's my second recommendation. Not necessarily Acts specifically, but any book of the New Testament that you want to learn a bit more about, read this commentary. Really recommend it. Now the third that I've got here is God on Mute by Pete Greig. And really what I want to do here is recommend books by Pete Greig rather than God on Mute in particular. So he's written a few. I've read this one quite a long time ago now. I read maybe last summer or the one before that, a book called Dirty Glory, which is about prayer. And he's written quite a few, but recently he's written a book called How to Pray, a Simple Guide for Normal People. And Pete does a brilliant job of kind of speaking about God, speaking about prayer, speaking honestly, speaking personally, speaking vulnerably. I really, really enjoy the way that he writes. Again, it's really easy to read. And this I found really helpful, God on Mute. If you're feeling like, where is God in this time? This is probably a book for you because he's been there as well. So that could be really helpful to hear someone else's experience and just what they've learned and think about God in regards to when we feel like we're not hearing from him. If you are wanting to feel a bit more like excited and passionate about prayer and mission, I'd really recommend Dirty Glory. I was on the beach reading this book, getting so excited about prayer and about what God can do. I absolutely loved it, so I'd really recommend that. And if you just want to maybe grow a bit in your prayer life personally, his latest book might be for you. So I'm not necessarily recommending a book here, but Pete Greig as an author is really, really great. So they are my 3 recommendations. I realise that they are all Christian books. They won't always be, but as you can see, I read teen fiction, I read Harry Potter and not much else. And that's the door, so I'm going to go now. Have a great week.